Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please take your seats, and welcome to part 1 of a one-part lecture series on board games. I clearly remember where I was the first time I played Settlers of Catan. I was sitting at a coffee table playing Settlers of Catan. I don't quite understand why people find these memories so difficult to hold on to. That said, I did not enjoy myself. But as would often prove the case in years to come, this had more to do with the people present and less with the game itself. In the years since its release, the game has proven immensely popular, not least of all because of its accessibility. Specifically, its reach beyond the usual hobbyist crowd, and while many newer and more innovative games have come along since then, that could be argued to have replaced Settlers of Catan as the funnel through which new blood surges into the hobby, it did tap into something very profound about the play experience. Settlers of Catan showed that trading can be fun and social, not an artless exchange of one resource for another, but something that enriches play, something that adds to the right here and now of playing together. Trading resources allowed people to engage one another. It added social interaction to the game itself, as opposed to just having people talk about the weather or gossiping about niece Theresa's new partner. It's never going to last anyway. Instead, by adding the option to trade freely with other players, Settlers of Catan was elevated from an individualistic pursuit of chance and resource management into a group endeavor. I know of couples who would meet regularly to wine, dine, and Catan? Anyway, and who eventually broke up, with the other couple, not each other, mind you. The point of contention being the one player who lost sight of the social aspect and became hell-bent on winning über alles. These couples did not take kindly to that mindset. This was not a unique incident. I've heard players retell the same story or some variation on it whenever they talked about the Catan evenings. It kept coming up because trading in a board game is actually counterintuitive to what makes trading worthwhile in general. So let's talk about trading. A trade is an exchange of goods. It is entered willingly. If one of the participants is actually unwilling, we tend to call it anything from robbery to coercion, or any other term that marks it as ethically dubious and legally problematic. Trade is a willing exchange of goods. All parties enter a trade with the expectation that they will be better off afterwards, since getting something you want more than what you already have is generally the main motivation to trade. People have written essays, books, and thesis papers about the great social good that trading represents, the betterment of man that it inspires, and the progress it inevitably brings forth. There is no end to the praises of capitalism that are all born out of the idea that trade in its pure form is the engine of peace and prosperity. So far, so good. You're welcome to read some Adam Smith and Wealth of Nations if you want to be swept up in the utopian enthusiasm for what society's future in trading holds. And I leave it up to you to figure out why and how said utopia somehow still manages to elude our grasp. So naturally, transposing these dynamics of human give and take into the petri dishes of social interaction, which is board gaming, seems like a no-brainer. If we can capture some of the dynamism of trade and uplifting energy of mutually assured betterment, we should have a fantastic game on our hands. An experience that not only brings people together, but also reinforces one of the tenets of Western civilization. Trade is a social good. And while the aspiration is commendable, I'm going to curb controversy here by saying that board games have utterly failed in achieving that. Trade as a mutually beneficial exchange of goods is an aberration in play and not the norm. In fact, the more central the trade concept is to the game, the less it succeeds in actually having the desired or theorized effect. Trading in board games is not a mutually beneficial exchange, but at best a highly volatile transaction that can be upended and its effectivity negated with trivial effort. At worst, it is an act of salesmanship with all participants assuming that every offer made is done in bad faith, that people will engage in subterfuge, truth-bending, or outright lying in an attempt to make their position appear weaker and the trade less useful to them than it actually is. To be fair, this isn't an indictment of that kind of play experience. I enjoy social deduction games far too much to not understand the thrill of bald-faced lies and low-scale manipulation, but it is without a doubt a far cry from the great noble pursuit of trading that allows both parties to be better off after the trade. In fact, most trading in board games preys on people's idealistic, if not naive, belief that a trade does provide a benefit to both parties and that participating in a trade is a boon and not a trap. On the one hand, we have the idealism of trading as social and beneficial, and on the other, we have trading as a con, a slip-in Jimmy style exercise in fast talking and appealing to your opponent's lower instincts so they don't realize you're actually ripping them off. You might now be thinking that I'm talking a load of horseradish, that you distinctly remember countless instances where you had a great trading experience with everybody better off afterwards, and that is probably true. But let's look at Settlers of Catan, a game that arguably became such a sensation because it did just that. It created a gaming experience that was predominantly social because it allowed everybody to interact with each other. Instead of rigid turn orders and actions, you could always engage with other players to trade and improve your lot and maybe help somebody out. I've heard of so many stories where the entire table would basically cooperate in helping each other get the resources they needed so they too could build that settlement or that road this turn. And if you find yourself frowning right now, you might be catching on to what the huge flaw of trading in board games might be. People like to give and help. It's one of our more annoying tendencies. We enjoy being helpful, making others feel better and all that mushy stuff. It's a very potent addiction that some people refuse to grow out of, but there you are. So if a board game offers the possibility to indulge in this inexplicable behavior, we generally take it. We reach out and give. Unfortunately, trading in board games doesn't generally account for this possibility. With only a handful of exceptions, games assume that we only look to trade to get something for ourselves. These designs assume that we are primarily motivated by getting ahead, or at least doing better than our neighbor. And all this finds its truest expression in the victory point calculation at the end of the game. The hunt for VPs is both the end goal and sole motivation to trade. We only trade to get more points, not just more than we already have, but more than somebody else. The game's design is poised to get its hooks into us by appealing to a desire to best our opponents, by seeing the trade as a means to an end, and by always keeping an eye on how much of an advantage a trade gives another player. We subtly but fundamentally alter our understanding of trades. We start to consider trades not as ways in which two parties can benefit, but instead a confrontation in which we must attempt to get a greater benefit than our trading partner. We are all struggling to become top dog of VP Hill, so we do not actually look for an equitable trade, but one that slightly puts us a little bit further ahead. It's the reason why trading dries up for good during the endgame of Settlers of Catan. Even though trading is arguably the most engaging, satisfying and socially rewarding part of the game, it is pushed aside because even board games cannot escape the rat race. This holds true regardless of whether trade is utterly free-form with little to no regulations from the rules like in a game of Chinatown, as well as trades that are strongly restricted and regulated like in a game of Archipelago. Even if that game comes closest to breaking free from the mindset that trade is just the continuation of war with other means. But then again, that mindset isn't purely inherent in the game's design. Sometimes it's only in our heads. I appreciate the attention you've given me and hope you're now fully equipped to never enjoy trading games again. Please enroll for a follow-up lecture wherein I shall elaborate on why diplomacy is in fact an awful game.